They guaranteed, they backed up mortgages that people couldn't afford. And as a result of that, we built a housing bubble that we all experienced the collapse of last year. And that took the market down and frankly had an awful lot to do with the credit problems and ultimately the auto problems. Now the federal government bailed out the auto industry to the tune of about $25 billion. But you know that in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, there's an open checkbook, and we're now well over $100 billion of bailing out their bad decisions that they've been made there. And in this so-called financial services reform bill, there's nothing that even addresses that. We're telling the community bankers how to run their business, many of which you wonder whether or not they're going to be in business for very long. We've created a new consumer protection agency in Washington, D.C., but we've missed the fundamental problem. Frankly, I don't need Washington to bail me out. I don't need Washington to protect me. I'm smart enough, and my belief is that all of you are as well, is to look out for your own interest. That's not the approach in Washington. The health care bill is another example. Rather than addressing the real problems that exist in health care, which in my view were the access to the individual insurance market for people and containing the exploding costs of health care, what we did was we used this crisis, if you will, to assume federal authority over virtually every aspect of our health care. And we missed the boat there, folks. I believe that health care reform was necessary and is necessary, but not this bill. Rather than taking and going in the wrong direction, we could have focused on finding ways to make the system more competitive, giving people who find themselves in the individual insurance market tax credits so that they could then go into the marketplace with resources by taking down the barriers to buying insurance across state lines. And now suddenly we're going to create competition in healthcare. Because you know, today, there is none, really. I mean, here in Michigan, we're eligible only to buy those programs that the insurance commissioner has authorized for the state. You couldn't go to Delaware if you saw a program that you wanted, or you couldn't go to South Dakota if there was one that suited your family. That, to me, is wrong. We need to take down those barriers so you can do exactly that. And you can't have health care reform without tort reform. You can't, and it isn't even so much the big jury awards that we read about in the paper. Well, those are a problem. You know what the real problem is that we've created a system where physicians will simply order every additional test that they think is necessary if there's even a scintilla of chance that they might have some malpractice exposure. And of course, we don't really pay for it directly, do we? I mean, it comes in a bill, or it comes in something from Blue Cross or whatever. This is not a bill, and you go, well, okay, and you file it away. Now, I believe that we'll make much better decisions about our health care if we're responsible for our own spending. There's something called health savings accounts, which are money that you are able to set aside and that you're able to spend on your health care decisions. And if you don't spend them, it rolls over tax-free year after year after year. Maybe you need glasses, maybe you need dentures, maybe you need a hip replacement. Well, you're in a position to make that decision, and people are covered with a major medical plan so that there is coverage for catastrophic illness. But not anymore. Now we're going to see an expansion of Medicaid, which will be forced back on the states at a budget we can't even pay for now in Lansing. We're going to see about $500 million more federal or Medicaid obligations over the course of this decade. So there's a lot of problems out there, and we all, I think, recognize that, but part of what I think is important is that we talk about solutions. Because frankly, if we're asking for your vote and we're asking for people to give us the opportunity to take the country in another direction, we've got have to have an agenda that makes sense. I talked a little bit about what I would do with health care reform, and I think we can do that if we get people, reasonable people together who really want to solve the problem. But the other thing is, of course, jobs in the economy. We've got to look at the fact that we have created a system in this nation, as I said before, where we're taxing investment, savings, and job growth. In fact, we have a situation coming up on the 1st of January where the capital gains tax will increase from its current 15% upwards of 25%, and then another 5% on top of that because of the new health care tax, which is going through. And the estate tax, or the death tax, which today has been eliminated, will come back on January 1st. So on January 1st, if you pass away on December 31st of this year, your family will inherit your estate in its entirety. But if you pass away on January 1st of 2011, your family will pay 55% of your estate to Uncle Sam. Now, you know, some may say, well, great, tax the rich and all that sort of business. Well, the reality of all this is that if you have a business and you have an estate, you're going to have to sell that family business in order to pay your federal tax. If you have a farm, for example, and much of your estate is in real estate, well, it's not liquid, but the tax man is waiting for his 55%. I think that that's unbelievable that we would tax people's earnings, that tax their hard work, tax the money that they've already paid taxes on in most cases, to that tune. But the Congress has failed to act. We have to send signals to the business community that we're going to lift that cloak of uncertainty, that we're going to start cutting federal spending dramatically. We're going to take a look at our tax code, whether it's the fair tax, the flat tax, whatever. We have to change the tax system, but we're going to take steps immediately to reduce capital gains or eliminate them, in my view, cut the marginal tax rates, because a lot of people in business, small business, pay a individual rate, but we also have to lower the corporate tax rate as well to make the United States the most attractive place in the world in which to do business. On top of regulations and a number of different things, but I believe if we take some of these positive steps, we won't see days like we saw yesterday in the market. It's follow that. We're up and we're down. We lost almost 300 points in the market, and of course we're under 10,000 again. And, you know, even if you don't watch this day in and day out, this has implications for our economy, particularly in a state like Michigan. And we need to provide some stability to this government. Stop the direction that we're going in. Stop digging that hole that we find ourselves in, and then begin to turn that around by bringing some people to the table. Like-minded, people who want to reform the system, change it, do what's necessary in order to put us back on track. These are the reasons why I got into the race and why I'm running. But I can tell you, as I held that hours-old baby the other day, I mean, I looked into her eyes and I thought to myself, you know, what is this child going to be able to say about our generation when she's my age? You know, when she's 51 years old, will she look back at our generation, if you will, and say that they stepped up to the obligations and responsibilities that they had, the gifts that they were given by their parents and grandparents, the freest, most prosperous nation in the world, or are we going to squander this opportunity and put more and more burden on our children and grandchildren? And I don't think we can afford to do that. Either, you know, morally it's irresponsible, and so the time is now to make the kind of changes that this country deserves. Certainly the people deserve. So that's just a little bit about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. But again, as I said before, my real intention is to hear from you, have a chance to answer questions, and to talk about things. Yes, sir.